Welcome once more to Reflections. Going to talk about a number of things today, Andrew. First of all, from the Jewish point of view, it's a special few days, isn't it?
It is. We've finished Rosh Hashanah, the Feast of Tabernacles, where everybody builds their tabernacle and sleeps outside, or the men do, under the stars, to remember the days that people slept outside in the wilderness when they were leaving from Egypt to the Promised Land. And we're coming to the end now of the High Holy Days. These are the great Jewish festivals. We had Rosh Hashanah, which was the start of the new year, the new Jewish year, the Julian calendar, not the Gregorian calendar. And then we went into the fast day of Yom Kippur. And now we come to the final festival, which is a festival of great rejoicing. But this is the day that the Jews celebrate the giving of the Torah, Simchat Torah, the Torah giving of the Torah Day. And it's this day that people often go and celebrate. And some of the young people kind of try and run away from their home if possible and have a good time. And 2 years ago, they went and had a music festival down in the south of Israel, near the Gaza border. And those very clever people from Hamas thought this is the day to capture the Israelis. And they went in there and they knocked down their tents and they blew up their houses and they shot them down and they did terrible things. They massacred the community. They raped them. They decapitated their heads. It was the most terrible crisis. And they flew in all of these rockets. It was incredible to see how this small terrorist organization, supported by the Iranians, could actually bring havoc to a whole community. And so Israel went in with full force. The IDF, the Israel Defense Force, had a full flight attack on the people of Gaza. And their attempt over the next months and months was to try and kill all the leaders of the Hamas. And they just bombed and bombarded Gaza. And what was even a pleasant area of Gaza, in Gaza City, was just totally destroyed. And we have watched the people dying for 2 years. And then we had this peace deal which Trump got together. And you had to be as crazy as Trump to be able to do such a deal. I knew those guys down there. I had worked with them for years. I knew how dangerous and how impossible it was dealing with them. But he went in And we thank God that in the end, they did make a settlement. Israel, the IDF, the Israel Defense Force, had done a good job putting down Hamas, but it had also destroyed a whole community. And this was a great festival, the festival of Simchat Torah, which is the time when the Jewish people thank God for presenting them with the Torah. And their whole life is based on the Torah. So in a way, God gave them everything. And Hamas took from them everything. And to try and sort out this terrible dilemma was more than a nightmare. They had had their people destroyed. And Israel said that this was the biggest destruction of the Jewish people since the Holocaust. You could not compare it with the extent of the tragedy of the Shoah, the Jewish name for the Holocaust. But people started talking, using the language of a genocide, which had never been used for anything apart from the Holocaust. And so it's a highly, highly painful scenario. And it will take Israel years to get over it. But it was amazing that Trump came up with this deal to sign a peace process. And I talked to some of the people on the Israeli side and on the other side. And I told them that there is no way you can make this deal just by force. You have to bring in the bad guys. You have to sign a deal with them. And that's what they did. Can you believe it? Trump signed a peace deal, not just with Israel doing the bombing, but also with the Hamas, who are doing the slaughter from the other side. And now we come back to this great celebration that in the midst of all this tragedy, God sent the Torah. And the whole of the Jewish faith, the whole of the Jewish people, the whole of Israel is based on Simchat Torah.
And the difference between the Ten Commandments and the Torah?
Well, the Ten Commandments are a very key part of the Torah, and they are part of the Torah which is given for everybody, because within the Torah, the great rabbis taught there was something called the Noahide Mitzvah. There were 7 laws that if anybody kept them, they would gain the heritage of the Jewish people, of not just being in the promised land, but being in the eternal promised land and having heaven. And those 7 no-hide mitzvah were clearly, to start with, believing in only one God, not committing incest. But one of the very interesting things was the treatment of animals was also in there. For it says you cannot eat meat from live animals, because in days past under the Philistines, there was no refrigeration. So they would regularly chop off a limb from an animal and eat it and let the animal stay alive. So these are all the tenets of the Torah. And I am just so thankful that so much of my life has been based on understanding the teachings of the rabbis, the Talmud, the Torah, and Simchat Torah has always been a major part of my life and experience.
We've mentioned this before, Andrew, but it's worth mentioning it again. That when we think of dealing with Hamas, they have got a terrible record. And in fact, let's be straight about it. Their Bible, the Quran, tells them they can gain brownie points if they lie. Now, I mention this because this is the very early stage of maybe a long process, the agreement that Trump's got together. And I've read the 20 points and it really is very, very good.
But they have broken it already.
Exactly. They have presented some bones, which they said was regrettable because it was some of the Israelis that were kidnapped and killed. And these bones were nothing to do with that. So they've started already.
And they haven't been returning all of the bodies that they said they would. And rightly so, they say that issue is very difficult because returning dead bodies is often returning bodies which have been buried under the rubble that Israel has destroyed. But it's going to be a very difficult piece to see through. But it is the kind of crazy opportunity that only somebody like Trump could actually persevere with to start, and those 20 points are all very serious.
Can we be a bit more factual and say the following, Andrew, that the many innocent people that died on both sides, a lot of them could have been saved had not Hamas put children, schools, and hospitals as a defense shield in the way? That is terrible.
Yes, it's evil. Hamas is an evil terrorist movement on every side. There is nothing humane, nothing loving, even though it has hospitals and humanitarian facilities. It did not let through the corridors of help, and even now it is not. And now Israel is saying, if Hamas is going to continue to break the rules of these 20 points, they will stop the whole process.
Another question one has to ask is, A, how do you personally feel about all the pro-Palestinian marches through the tragedies of the last few days, including Manchester? They're still marching, Andrew, and certain people are now asking, hang on, why don't you march in favour of Ukraine, where there's been terrible bloodshed, and that needs sorting out? But they keep carrying on anti-Israel.
The terrible thing is, this is not just anti-Zionism. This is serious anti-Semitism. And we have to stand firm against anti-Semitism at all costs, because even the government recognition of the Palestinian state in Parliament today, watching Prime Minister's Questions Time, the Prime Minister Keir Starmer was trying to say that he had contributed to this great global work of Trump by recognizing the Palestinian state. To recognize the Palestinian state is to say the evil of the Hamas and the terror that they inflicted upon the people of Israel was totally accessible. This is evil, evil, and evil. And as a Christian leader, I have to say that we have got to stand up and do everything which will prevent anti-Semitism. I would say that my first priority in life is to acknowledge the evil that the church has done. And one of my recent books, The Older Younger Brother, was all about the evil that the church has done over 2,000 years to the Jewish people. We are not innocent. There are a few good people like Bonhoeffer, but there were far more bad people.
This is the difference, of course, between an individual, God-fearing Jew, God-fearing Christian, and the bureaucracy, if you wish, the state that mixes religion with politics for their own ends, and you finish with corruption.
More than corruption, you have a destitute, evil phenomenon which they do in the name of God. And this is the evil. Anti-Semitism, what is it? It's not just being anti-Jewish, it's being anti-God's people.
Dangerous place to be.
And I think unless we stand up and do something radical, we are going to be in that place of total destruction. And God will not recognize a people who are causing such evil. The church must stand up and do everything possibly can to fight the evil of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is getting at the very heart of who God is and what God is.
Very hard, strong, but true words, Andrew. But we're going to finish with some good news. You've been, well, you've become a godfather again. This is the 67th time.
It is. I've had a new godchild born. I only got the pictures yesterday. But this godchild is called Andrew, and he was born on my birthday. And his mother was one of the poor women which was caught up in Nineveh when it was attacked by ISIS. And we removed her and her whole family from Sinjar and Mosul and Nineveh. They were in Nineveh, which is the Nineveh of Jonah, where the Christians all escaped to. But Hamas escaped with them. And I will show you some pictures of them soon. But what they endured was unbelievable. And they endured it. And I will never forget the day when the children were lined up by ISIS and guns were pointed at them. And they were told, you have got to say that you will follow Islam and that Allah is your God. Otherwise you will die. And the children said, no, we follow Jesus. And Jesus loves us. And we love him. And every day we talk to him and he talks to us. And they were all killed.
Tragic. And let's hope the tragedies, many of them will come to an end bit by bit. But in the old words of George Orr, not war, war, it's the way to go.
Well, I think either out of that exact tragedy, I gained my 67th godchild, and he's called Andrew. And there we actually got these people to flee from the evil of ISIS. And yet we were pulled before the charity commissioners and accused of paying terrorists to get our people free. I never paid 1 shekel. We did it all by our serious negotiations. And we saved lives.
Finally, Andrew, we've got to come to the conclusion in all this. If we've got a godless state, it's not going to do us any good. It'll come back to haunt us. And if you look at the states throughout the world, and many are including Great Britain now, who boast atheism is the answer, and even Marxism is the answer. There's more than Britain in all this, but there's real problems here.
But we know stronger than ever that God is the only answer. And it's amazing to see, Nicky Gumbel put a post out this morning saying we are seeing a almost silent, mighty increase in Christianity. The churches like HDB are so full of people that they cannot get any more in. And we give God the glory. In all this tragedy, revival has come.
Thank you so much, Andrew. We'll see you very shortly.
See you next week. Blessings.